How you doing? How's everybody doing?
Hi, Mr. Howard.
Good evening, Madam President. It is 6 p.m. I've started the recording.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy, and welcome everyone to our meeting. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mrs. Maida.
Please unmute your mic, Miss Maida.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, excuse me, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have a moment of silent meditation, please. And thank you all.
Thank you, Mrs. Maida. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive
order.
session. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do roll call. Go ahead, Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Miss Burton,
Here.
Miss Green, Dr. Henderson,
Here.
Mr. Howard,
Here.
Mr. Levinstein,
Here.
Miss Maida,
Here.
Miss Mineo,
Here.
Mr. Stridiron, Mr. Walker.
Now, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose. Matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, collective bargaining under the Taylor Law, NTA, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Miss Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Miss Maida,
Yes.
Miss Mineo.
Yes. We will return.
You're all set, Madam President. I started the recording back up.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We're now at the section of the agenda for public discussion and comments on agenda items. Please refer to the regulations regarding discussion and comments. Mr. McCoy, I see only one person in the attendees, so we'll wait and we'll do non-agenda at the end, okay?
Sounds good, man.
Okay,
Hold on, let me let Mr. Lamar know.
thank you.
You're all set, Mr. Lamar. Please unmute your microphone. Mr. Lamar, are you there? You need to unmute your mic. Doesn't look like you're getting a response. man.
Sorry.
Oh,
Did you
there
get
he
me?
is. All right.
I
Yep.
apologize.
Your 5 minutes has begun.
Thank you. Ryan Lamar, New Windsor, parent and taxpayer. I'm here to express my embarrassment and continued dismay at the response by this board regarding the allegations of sexual harassment by the former superintendent. In reporting by Mid-Hudson News based on the district's release of the investigation results, we read the following. Both reports are highly redacted, with several sections blacked out and many blank pages, but one reference was overlooked. Quote, based on the Title VII analysis above, it appears that Dr. P's actions also violate Title IX, wrote Melinda Gordon, the attorney hired by the board to examine the allegations. Gordon explained that federal Titles VII and IX and how they apply to harassment, in particular sexual harassment. She wrote that Title IX applies to schools, local and state educational and other institutions that receive federal financial assistance. A district that receives such funds must operate its educational programs or activity in a non-discriminatory manner, free of discrimination based on sex, including orientation and gender identity. She also stated that similar to Title VII, Title IX protects employees of educational institutions, programs, and activities against workplace discrimination, sexual discrimination, and harassment. Now, we have a statement from the Board of Education that will be followed by a, quote, joint press release between the Board of Education and the superintendent. If we're to accept the explanation this is all happening for money, I believe the Board of Ed has failed to factor the risk of potential lawsuits from victims that, from what I have read, the taxpayers of this district would have to bear. If this occurred on one trip to San Diego, has it occurred to you that there may have been more incidents? Can you guarantee taxpayers that there are no other potential victims? Has anyone asked the rest of the employees, is the board aware of other allegations, past and present? If we're quantifying monetarily, what is the risk of lawsuits from the women who stepped forward? They had to resign their positions. They have heard no words of support or justice from this Board of Education. At your last meeting, one board member actually proposed that there should be victim shaming. In this statement, you once again refuse to clearly state for our community that the Board of Education firmly condemns sexual harassment. If you're conscious of liability in lawsuits, your counsel, in my opinion, is failing. So now the Board of Education and the superintendent feel they would like to move forward and that this is the way to do it. The truth is, we would not even have this retroactive statement had the public not spoken. It would have ended with a last-minute meeting on New Year's Eve. And do you know who cannot move forward after your statement? The women, known to you and possibly unknown to you. The employees who are witnessing this and realizing there will be no justice in the district for enduring sexual harassment. What is the monetary value of the morale of the employees in this district? Aside from the women who came forward, the people who can never move on that I am most concerned about are the children of this school district. Have you seen or heard what the students of this district are saying? Do you care? I encourage you to find out. I'm here to state to those kids and all of our kids and to the women of this school district, as a taxpayer and a community member, this was wrong. Sexual harassment is wrong. People in power should not be allowed to sexually harass their employees. This is not how a Board of Education should respond. I believe degradation of the respect that our students have for leadership because of this is manifesting already in their disrespect for adults throughout the district. You had an opportunity to educate. Where is your concern for social and emotional education? The damage to our children's perception of the institution of education is a priceless liability. To accept money that should be going to the students of this district in this deal is reprehensible, in my opinion. And the students are watching it happen even as they know what is missing from their classrooms and buildings. Who amongst you cares about what the students are thinking? You are a board of education. You do not operate in a vacuum, and the kids can see, read, and watch videos. I'm going to say it again. Sexual harassment is wrong. It's a pity that the Board of Education refuses to say so. Thank you.
Mr. McCoy, do we have anybody else to speak? I don't see anybody else in the attendees.
No, ma'am, they're not here in the room.
Okay, so we'll get back to this at the end of the meeting and see if the other person logs on at that time. We're going to move on to our interim superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we are going to have a capital project update. I will turn this over to Mr. Ramjug and his team. Mr. Ramjug?
I don't see Mr. Ramjug in the room, sir, but I do see Mr. Rodriguez from the Plumbo Group. He's here.
Hey guys, yep, I'm here for this part of the meeting. Do we want to wait a little bit for Mr. Ramjug?
No, sir. Why don't you continue?
Okay, we'll do. Thank you, Madam President. Well, let's move to the second slide. So really what we want to do is continue, and you know, and again, before going through the agenda, if there's any recommendations on how the Board of Ed would like to see our update, we'll definitely change and you know, manage the update. But today we want to talk about phase 2A, which is the construction that's currently happening at the CTE site. We also want to talk a little bit about phase 3, which is the Heritage Middle School design. Phase 5, the Valesgate Elementary School addition renovations, and 4B, which is New Windsor, the next step at New Windsor after the tower demo. So next. So on the CTE site, overall we're doing really well. I'm showing the contract values as they currently stand. We're still right now the project is hovering. We're $500,000 under budget, which is great. We have encountered some rock, so I just want to say that we knew we were going to encounter rock on this project, but right now we, again, just a revisit of the schedule. We mobilized third week of October. We took down the buildings; they were abated. This was the Odell office building in particular, and the shop area. Trees were removed that were required for the building. You know, right now, south side of the site is 85% complete. We still have quite a bit to go. Rock removal, we're saying 60% complete. So they're in the base bid of the contractor. There's a certain amount of rock that is in their base bid. And so far, we still have an allowance of rock within the bid as we continue moving through. So the rough grading for the roadways, the parking, for the building itself has occurred. There's also, what's not mentioned here is there was quite a bit of area that you know, the district used this site as an area that, you know, just throw in materials there over a period of time, and we've really been able to clean up the area quite a bit, and it's coming out really nice. Within the next week, we're going to be on the north side of the site. We're continuing rock removal. And again, we do feel there may be some rock that's going to be above and beyond the contract. Yeah, that'll set us up going into phase 2B, which is the bidding of the rest of the site and the bidding of the CTE building. So next. So this is I think this is a really good picture. It gives you a view of the site looking towards the river, and you know, you can see that the NFA main is to the left, and we're just looking at the high side, and you can see all of the mounds of rock that we've encountered that's being stockpiled. But the site, is you can see, is really coming together. Next slide. Again, this is just another stockpile of rock. It just gives you an idea. We're at 2,700 yards of rock that we've encountered that's being removed for the project. Next site containment. Again, just you saw, you know, this is Gidney Ave entrance. This is the new entrance. So there's rock removal occurring there as well. Want to talk briefly about the bidding and, you know, the design and redesign process for the next phases of work. The last time we reported to the board, we talked about the fact that we were over budget with the Heritage bid and the Valesgate bid. We went back through a value engineering process. We came up with some really creative ideas to get us back into place where we feel it's going to be in place for a rebid on these projects. So right now we're looking at Heritage being submitted to SED by February 1st. SED will review the redesign. Once they approve, we'll get back out on the street with Heritage. Valesgate is a 2-week push. 2 weeks later, we're looking to have Valesgate into SED for you know, for bidding of that work, or for, you know, again, for SED approval. So both of these projects are within 2 weeks of each other. They're both going to SED, and we're really going to push to get those projects approved so that we can get back out on the street with them. Phase 4B, which is the New Windsor addition and renovations. We had the New Windsor Tower demo, which that project is now, we're very close to being closed out. Successful project where the tower came down. We're looking to put a new addition. Based on what we learned, just back up real quick, just based on what we learned from the first 2 bids, we're taking a lot of that information from the trades on you know, how to control some of the dollars and cents from the first 2 bids. We've taken that into New Windsor. We have not bid New Windsor, and we want to make sure that you know, those changes are in New Windsor before we go out and bid.
Thank you.
So-
Hi, Mr. Ramjug. Welcome. And Mr. Rodriguez, can we pause for a moment? I have
Sure.
at least a board member with a question. Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand, and Mr. Howard, I see you also. So first, Mr. Stridiron, then Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. So as far as the rock at the CTE building, is that rock, where's that rock going? And are you generating that as revenue by selling that rock?
Thank you, Mr. Stridiron. Yeah, that's a good question. What we were looking to do was potentially use that as a base for your new roads. We've been talking about having a potential mining operation where we, take the stone, take it to a point that it's certified by the testing company to be used as or included with base material. We haven't gotten to that point yet. That conversation not only includes rock, but it's also going to include, it goes to topsoil. We're finding that we're going to have quite a bit of topsoil on the site as well. And what we want to make sure is, and I think your question is a good question, is that you don't want to give away material. So you own the rock. What we do with the rock, the contractor is required to get rid of the rock, or we can look at other ways of using that. The same thing with topsoil. Contractors required per the contract documents to get rid of a certain amount of topsoil. But if we have extra that can be potentially used throughout the district, I think there's opportunities there that we need to talk about, that benefit the district, benefit the contractor, when taking the material off site. Trucking today is the big cost. So any way we can minimize trucking for a contractor when removing materials, it's a win-win for everyone.
Is it possible to store it at Chestnut Street?
We have not talked about that. That's something I guess we can bring up in our next meetings if that's a potential location for material. Definitely, we can.
It's not too far away, and I believe a lot of that land is being unused. So if we could sell it for revenue at some point, that would be benefit for the business.
I think that's a great idea, and that's the kind of conversation that we're looking to have in the near future.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. How you doing, Mr. Rodriguez? So the last time you presented, there were some questions that I had presented in regards to the project labor agreement, the negotiations of the project labor agreement, and what concerns were taken to ensure that this work, we're talking $300 million, what percentage of this work is being contracted or subcontracted out to minorities, women, our local workers from the Newburgh and Large City School District? And you didn't seem to have an answer at that time, but I'm curious. So with this work being undertaken as of now and more work oncoming, can you give us those numbers? Can you tell us the amount of minorities that are working at these sites? How many local workers are working at these sites? And what did that look like in the negotiation process? And has minority contractors and women contractors been included in the process?
Mr. Howard, that's a great question. I think you're right, you did bring this up the last time. The work that we put out to bid, again, has been primarily demo and major site excavation, site removal. So we really haven't delved into a hard minority participation requirement. What we have done on the next phases of bidding for Heritage, for Valesgate, and New Windsor is we're having discussions with the trades to see, what kind of language we can put into bid documents that allows for a fair minority participation. It's not required by SED, and I think that's the same answer I gave you the last time. And it's not required by the State Department of Labor for school construction work. I think this is more of a request on the Newburgh side, and I think there's ways of putting in language that allows for better minority participation. And the minority participation when you look at women-owned businesses, WBEs, MBEs, they're going to come in more on the construction, on the new construction, the buildings, the additions, the renovations, new work, finishes. That's where you're going to see more participation, and we can get more, a lot more guys looking at the job as subcontractors. What we want to do too with the trades is make sure that when we have subcontractors bidding to the larger GCs, that these subcontractors are being given a good opportunity to bid the work. So I think your question's it's a great question. We just have to do our due diligence to make sure that we teach, we inspire inspire these contractors to come in and bid the work here at Newburgh. Because there's, like you said, it's a $256 million bond. How do we get a lot of local contractors involved?
And that's another concern, the local contract. We want our local workers to be a part of this process too. And I was just curious what type of outreach was being done to ensure that, that can be done at the next phase. Now, I know you have said that the construction phase is coming in, and I'm just curious, is that a commitment from you guys to try to really delve into this and ensure that we have a diverse, I know that if we're using the unions, but I know that they have something referring to direct entry or Labor Department waivers, which will allow, local workers to try to, be a part of this and be a part of this incredible living wage option. So are we going to look at it that way, or are we going to dig into it, or are we just, because I would hate to be on the other side of this construction and this job and saying what we could have done, what we should have done, because I know as a district, we do talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it's something that, we preach it in our district. We want it in our buildings, we want it in our workforces, but I think it's also the people that we do work with. We need to follow that same type of understanding.
All great points, Mr. Howard. I think our job is to teach. When you look at projects of this scale, I think there are a lot of minority contractors that because of the size of some of these projects, they may fall back and say, well, I have no business bidding this, but it's our job to teach that they can be bidding, they should be bidding this work. What we've done by when you look at this project as a whole, we're not going out to bid with $256 million. We've been going out to bid with very manageable pieces that allow the local contractors to bid this work and that are bonded to bid this work. We're not looking for this huge contractor from Manhattan to come in and build all of your facilities. We're looking to make sure that we've broken this thing up into pieces that allow all of your smaller contractors that are local to bid the work. So it's a dance that we do. My biggest thing is it's my job to teach. It's my job to teach the trades what we're going out to bid with, and it's Palumbo's job to really get as many interested bidders, whether they're MBE, WB or not, get them interested in this project so that you guys, you get the benefit of that. But any thoughts that the board has that can, help us, get more interest in the project on the more minority side, I mean, we're open. We would love any of that discussion to happen.
Thank you for your explanation, and I really know that it's a difficult conversation, but I'm glad that I'm pleased with your answers, and I really think that it's something that I needed to ask, but I appreciated you delving into it and giving me some open, serious, open-hearted answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Howard.
I see Mr. Walker is waving. Go ahead, Mr. Walker.
A couple of things. First is concerning your group. If I what is the workforce breakdown in terms of ethnicity and the like in your organization?
Well, our organization is minority. I'm a minority. I own
What?
50, I own 51% of this company. So that's first and foremost. We have a mix.
Well, it's first
Excuse me?
and foremost, but what about the breakdown of the workforce itself, the number of people who work for you?
So we're a professional-based company. We have about 35 employees. Of the 35 employees, there's a mix of white, Puerto Rican, Indian, and yeah, we cover. What's that?
And what?
Excuse me?
You said, and you said, and a what? And I asked you what and a what meant.
No, I didn't say and a what. I said we cover every race. We have every race working for us. I guess, are you asking? It's a hard question. Are you asking my percentage of? I'm trying to get to where you're trying to go with your question.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I'm asking you. Since you overseeing, you're in charge of education, I'd like to know what your company's doing. That's all.
Yeah, and just so you know my background,
I
again,
didn't ask for your background, sir. I'm sure your background is perfect.
thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank
Mr. Walker,
you.
do you have another question?
Well, I didn't get an answer to the first one.
So what your question is you want to know the representation of the,
Yeah, I like a printout of that. That would make it easy. I like a printout of his organization.
okay, we'll get that for you for the next, probably in the weekly if we can. Mr. Forget, is that possible? Yes, Mr. Forget is saying yes, it's possible. Is that okay, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, that part's okay.
Okay, what's your next question?
My next question is, how long has the company been involved in this education of minorities, even though there's no federal, or I forget what else he said, requirements for them to do so?
Okay, so we've been doing K-12 construction. We started the company in 2000. I've been in K-12 construction for 26 years. When it comes to the promotion of minority participation, it's a standard requirement on most.
It's a what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. It's a what?
It's a standard requirement on most public works projects, except for school work. So when you look at federally funded projects,
Except for school work?
Except for schoolwork, and your attorney is part of this conversation, but Mr. Shaw could probably let you know that public school work has never had a minority requirement during the bidding process.
But your company has, and how long has it had such thing? You said since 2000? Did you say that?
I started the company in 2000, yes.
Oh, okay.
Board members, anybody else? Questions, comments? Thank you.
I have a comment, but I'll wait to executive session.
Okay, if not, just write me a note, Mr. Walker, because we're not going back, I don't think. Mr. Stridarn, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Rodriguez for doing a very thorough job. When we went through the process of trying to pick a firm that would be doing this type of work, I understand the business of construction. When he said he's in the business of education, it's not that he's an educator. That's a term for education work. So I think Mr. Walker may have thought he was talking about education as far as that other type of term, but
I didn't.
yeah, I don't know where you're going, Mr. Walker. It seems very one-sided. So I don't know. Thank you.
Okay,
You.
Mr. Forget, are we ready to move on, or what's next with this group?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Our next item on the agenda is Ms. Carolyn presenting an update on the capital project for the library. Ms. Carolyn?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Forget, board members. I am honored to have our architects here this evening to walk you through a brief presentation of an exciting new project that we have going on at the Newburgh Free Library. This is the first time since we've started that we've actually, in the 70s, that we've actually conducted a renovation project. So we're looking to have 5 phases of renovation over the next few years to take advantage of New York State construction aid funding, as well as capital funds that we have reserved for this purpose over the last many years, and creating a state-of-the-art library to serve our community. So I'd like to introduce you to Tom Horvath and Tom Ritzenthaler from CS Arch, right down the road from the library. And they will take you through the phase 1 library redesign for our renovated local history resource center and our state-of-the-art technology hub.
Well, good evening. I'm going to be brief because I'm going to let Tom Horvath really take you through the project. But as was expressed by Mary Lou, this is one of several phases for the library. Very exciting to be starting that phase. And one of the things you'll see tonight on the agenda is our recommendations for the award of the contracts, the prime contracts for the work of this first phase, which the library is already geared up and prepared for the contractors to start in earnest. So with that, I don't want to belabor it and take a lot of the board's time. I'll have Tommy Horvath go through the phase 1 overview, design intent, and then the contract bid award review.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So as he said, we're going to start off by going over just the overview of the renovations program and the design of the project, and again, the contract bid and the awards. So renovation overview, phase 1 includes moving the existing local history and e-learning programs from the 3rd floor downstairs to the 2nd floor of the library into newly created and constructed local history and technology hub spaces. This also includes renovation of 2 existing toilet rooms on the 2nd floor. This is an overview of the new spaces for local history and technology hub. They are both expanded and are larger than the current programs up on the 3rd floor of the library. So for local history, we want the space to become more interactive and have more room for display of artifacts and interactive spaces. We want to grab the attention of all of the library goers in this new space. But we also want to preserve storage of important archival documents and provide visitors a space for them to review the documents within the local history department. So for the design, we did choose to bring in colors and textures that are directly pulled from the Hudson Valley's own local history. We did meet with the local history directors and made sure to give them room for everything that they currently store in their local history space, as well as have room to expand and to swap out collections as they see necessary. For the technology hub, we wanted to create a dynamic space that people can gather, learn, and present in, similar to what you see on the screen. We wanted it to be an open learning space that's inviting for all, a space that someone walking by can just sit in on a class or presentation. So for the design of the space, we wanted it to allow for mobility and flexibility and really serve multiple purposes and uses while keeping everybody connected. We wanted to promote this idea of an open door policy that people can come and go as they please while still remaining connected and have accessibility to be able to plug in anywhere in the space. As for the toilet rooms, we're taking the two existing toilet rooms and transforming them into all gender toilets, single occupancy, that are ADA compliant or accessible. So the upgrades, although this is not an actual image of the toilet room, is an example showing fixtures and finishes and color palettes that we're intending to use within the new space. So moving away from the design and into the contract bids and awards, on November 30th of 2021, we accepted bids for the 4 different contracts for the project. We interviewed the lowest bidders on December 13th, and these next 4 slides are summaries of the bids by the different contract. So for this one, this one is for the general construction. We received 6 bids, and all the potential contractors submitted all of their required paperwork as requested in the bid. Next slide. For mechanical construction, for the second contract, the same. We have 4 bids for the contract. Again, all contractors, potential contractors submitted the required paperwork. Same for plumbing. We also had 4 bids for the plumbing contract. And again, all potential bidders submitted all the required paperwork. And finally, for electrical, we also had 4 bids, and the same thing. All potential contractors submitted all of the required paperwork. So for a summarization, this slide shows all the lowest bidders. So for general construction, we have the lowest bid was from Northeastern Interior Services, LLC, for the amount of $235,000, which came in low, about $103,000 lower than the estimated budget. For the second contract, mechanical construction, CB Strain and Son submitted the lowest bid for $139,800, which is about $2,500 lower than the estimated bid. For the third contract, plumbing construction, CB Strain also submitted the lowest bid for a total of $76,700. This was $24,200 higher than the estimate. And for the final contract, electrical construction, Harry Effertolo and Son submitted the lowest bid for $58,731, which was $3,644 lower than the estimate. So in total, the overall project came in, the bids came in about 80 for contract 1-01 general construction. It'd be awarded to Northeastern Interior Services for the amount of $235,000. For contract 1-02 mechanical construction, it'd be awarded to CB Strain and Son Incorporated for the amount of $139,800. For contract 1-03 plumbing construction, we are recommending that it be awarded to CB Strain and Son Incorporated for the amount of $76,700. And for the final contract 1-04 electrical construction, it be awarded to Harry Effertolo and Son Incorporated for the amount of $58,731. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Walker, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Muted, Mr. Walker.
When you ask them to fill out questions or to fill out the required, I think what word you use, the required application. Is there any way of knowing the individual company's employment of, I hate the word minorities, but of Black, Hispanic, Asian American, Native American employees? Is that on the application?
That is not on the qualification application, Mr. Walker. We can certainly request that information from the contractor. It would also, we would also need to inquire whether, obviously these organizations have employees that work on multiple jobs at the same time. Who would they have?
Also not talking about janitors and the like, even though they're important. Okay.
Yeah, we would have to ask them that question.
Okay.
Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So it's the same line of question, Madam President. And I don't mean to be redundant. I don't mean to kick a dead horse or beat a dead horse, but I guess the question is, what was the process in bidding out this work? Was there any opportunities for minority contractors or subcontractors to be a part of this process? And if not, I understand when people say that the State Education Department is not a requirement, but it should be a requirement of our district. We shouldn't have, if we're not going to follow the recommendations or suggestions in other manners, then let's do it. Let's make our own minds up. Let's make our own decisions. And I think that we as a district, we are talking about being diverse, being inclusive, being equitable. And if it's not a part of our contracting and subcontracting when we bid work out, it's a problem for us as a district. Because at some point in time, our video has to match our audio. If we're talking about being diverse and equitable and inclusive, it has to be a part of the bidding processes too.
Mr. Howard, Mr. Walker, I see you waving.
I agree with what Mr. Howard.
I think we lost him now.
Oh. Okay. Mr. Forget, are we done with this part of the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I need to see the agenda. And that concludes our items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're going to move on to our board committees. We're going to start with our library committee, Mr. Stridiron. And by the way, I'm looking forward to seeing the updates to the library. I think it's going to be fabulous when it's done.
Thank you, Madam President. We met on January 13th, and you saw the presentation that the committee saw, and we asked that they present tonight to the board so that the board can be informed of what was happening. We also had the RCLS Executive Director and the Chief Financial Officer, Grace Riario, and the Chief Financial Officer, Stephen Hoffer, there to present. They discussed the budget, the Central Library collaboration, and the systems and services priorities for RCLS. And we have one item on the agenda tonight for approval for the bids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stridiron. The next item is the Personnel Committee, which is me. All of the items discussed at Personnel Committee are here on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I'm going to move on to Buildings and Grounds Committee, Mr. Levinstein.
Thank you, Madam President. The Building and Grounds Committee met on January 19th, and the committee discussed resolutions 7.4 through 7.6 on tonight's finance agenda, which includes the redesigning of Valesgate and Heritage Mechanical System and NICEAD submissions for Sacred Heart. The committee discussed with Mr. Ramjug, capital construction project update, including the necessary change orders and a change order credit. And we also discussed with Mr. Velez the building conditions survey update, the broken pipe damage and repair at NFA North, heritage floor repair, parking lot repairs at NFA North and Main, window repairs at Gardnertown and Fostertown, and bringing in Verizon Fios service at NFA North and Horizons. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levinstein. We're going to move on to my section. I have two quick things that I'd like to talk to everybody about. And the first one is the superintendent search. So at our last meeting, Mr. Shaw outlined the process. Friday, the request for proposal went out already, and at 2:00, those proposals will be received. That evening, all the board members are going to receive all the proposals that are sent in. The board will review these proposals against a rubric that has been created, and each member will choose their 3 highest scored proposals. The board will meet on Tuesday, February 1st in a special meeting only to select the company to do the search. We hope that we can appoint the search consultant at the February 8th meeting if we have consensus. So that's our goal, because our goal is to ultimately have a new superintendent in place by July 1st. So I'd like to open it up to questions. Anybody questions on that process? I'm trying to keep everybody up to date. We're going to have a lot of reading to do this weekend, ladies and gentlemen. So item 5.2 is virtual board meetings. And I wanted to talk a little bit about virtual board meetings. Governor Hochul has extended the virtual meetings to the end of the state of emergency. Right now, we have a couple of limitations that are holding us back from having in-person meetings. One is at 124 Grant Street in the auditorium, we can't fit there for 6 feet social distancing. And it would really limit the number of people that come in to see us. In the auditorium at NFA Main and Meadow Hill and Temple Hill, we have no live streaming or Zoom capacity. And there's a limit. That would limit viewing participation. So I understand there are pluses and minuses. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to open this up for comments really quickly. And then we're going to go around and have a consensus on this item. Mr. Stridine, go ahead.
I'm sorry, did you say that NFA Maine does not have the ability to live stream from the auditorium?
In discussing this, is Ms. Peterson available? Could she
Because
chime in on
I'm
that?
sure they live stream some live events.
Ms. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam President. So within some of the technological setup at Maine, there's certain things for board meetings in terms of recording and other devices that have to for every board meeting. That's set up at our auditorium at the Board of Education. If we do move it to Maine, some of the audiovisual part and some of the live streaming features that we use also to keep things secure would not be available to us there.
So they can have a live stream program for the arts, but we can't have a board meeting there? It doesn't make any sense.
Some of the technical components in terms of recording, I know that there's a clerk, there's mandates. We could definitely further explore, but in our initial we couldn't produce some of the same things. If you remember, when we do have in-person board meetings, everybody has an individual mic, individual statements are recorded. It's a little bit different.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. Mr. Howard, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Just for clarification purposes, so is there a number, or is anyone aware of the numbers that view the Zoom meetings at this point in time, approximately?
I can tell you, we had 1,600 people view our last meeting on YouTube.
Okay, so if we were to come in person, and we would not have the luxury of Zooming that was just stated, and would there be a 3 feet or 6 feet requirement, and what would be the maximum number of people that could fit in the auditorium with that COVID protocol?
Which auditorium you're talking about, Mr. Howard?
NFA, Maine.
Mr. Forget, can you help us with that?
Yeah, we did not do the calculation at NFA Maine due to the technology issues that were shared by Ms. Peterson, but we can certainly do that. But I also believe that there's a difficulty on the stage hearing each other from previous meetings when we do budget workshops and things like that. I know I personally have a difficult time hearing what our colleagues are saying on the board and on senior staff. The acoustics on the stage make it very difficult to hear in that type of a setting.
So currently, Madam President, with the 9 board members and the members from central office, can you give me that number, please?
I believe there are 19 of us altogether.
Will we be able to sit on the stage with social distancing?
No, sir.
So if we meet in person, is there a social distancing requirement for how we must sit? And what would that be? Is it 6 feet or is it 3 feet?
Mr. Forget, can you help me here?
And do we need partitions?
Not aware of partitions. I need to research 6 foot, 3 foot for public settings. I would have to defer to the Department of Health's guidance on that. I can tell you for educational spaces, but I'm not sure this falls into the same category. Again, that would be something that we would have to research, and I would have to get back to you on that.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Forget.
Oh, wait, let me say that again. Mr. Sturdiron, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. So the last time we had an in-person meeting, we sat right next to each other with masks on. So are you saying now there's a different requirement for meeting in person? And how can it be possible for there to be such a requirement when we have children? We have 25 kids in a classroom with a teacher and possibly an aide. And how do we, and then we technologically cannot figure out how to do a live stream meeting? I mean, it's pretty comical at this point, the lengths that we are going to not meet in person. But of course, send our kids and our staff to the schools to have these meetings. So
Thank you for
no
your
matter what.
snide. Thank you for the snide comment. Mr. Walker, I see your hand.
Yes, you already thanked him for the snide comment. So I want to thank you for that. The other thing that I want to say is that there are people on this board who volunteer their time. Nobody's getting paid, and we are at a high level of risk. So I find such a comment neither comical nor worthy of serious attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy, can you poll the board and see if they're in favor of virtual or in-person meeting, please? Excuse me, wait a minute, Mr. Howard has his hand.
Yes, Madam President. I think that answers to those questions will be important to this vote. Am I wrong in saying that? I mean, because if there is a protocol of sitting 3 feet or 6 feet, if there's a protocol for the retainer, the glasses or the plastic, don't you think we should have that information available to us before making a vote like this?
Mr. Forget, I see your hand.
Yeah, so I can respond to, in the school buildings, it's 6 foot social distancing and if you can't 6 foot, you mitigate with other strategies and you can reduce it to 3. But the rule is that you do not prevent an individual from attending school. You use other mitigation factors to the greatest extent possible. Again, this is a public forum. I don't know, Mr. Baer, do you have any knowledge of this, or Mr. Shaw? As long as we use the additional mitigation factors, I think, it would be okay. I still think having 19 people on the stage at NFA very difficult.
Mr. Shaw, I see your hand.
Yes, I know that the infection rates in a community will affect distancing. From my experience in other meetings where they do meet personally, it is 6 foot distance and people are spaced around, and the unknown factor is the audience and how many will be in attendance and whether you could have the 6 foot distancing with masks. So that's what's prevalent right now.
Mr. Howard, you have another question?
Yes, if that does go into play, would vaccination be required for attendees?
There is no vaccination requirement for public meetings.
Thank you.
Ms. Green?
Just as an aside, since we're talking about safety in terms of this virus and everything, this is why so many parents want to have remote learning for their children. Because if there are more children at home doing remote learning, that means that there are less children in the building for those children that are going to school, and that will also help with social distancing. This is why there are parents who are asking for remote learning so we can decrease the amount of children in buildings. I'm just throwing that out there as an aside. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Walker, I see you're.
Also, the last time that we met in the building, the restrictions had been lessened because we thought that the disease itself was not going to replicate itself or be as stringent as it was. Well, if you look at history, you see that it's now different. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to have a survey of the members, please, Mr. McCoy? Virtual or in person?
I'm gonna go with yes means virtual. So Ms. Burton,
No.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
No.
Mr. Howard, Mr. Howard, you're on mute.
No, based on the constraints.
Mr. Levinstein,
No.
I'm confused on your parameters here.
so
Mr.
yes,
McCoy.
yes means virtual. So it's either yes means virtual. If you vote no, that means we're going back in person. That's if you want me to do it a different way, you let me know.
I started again.
I misunderstood that. I'm sorry.
You got to start again because they misunderstood that.
All right, I'll start from the top. So if you vote yes,
No.
virtual stays.
Why don't you just have us say virtual or in
Okay,
person?
let's go with
Thank
virtual,
you.
not virtual. Ms. Spurton, virtual or no virtual?
No virtual.
Ms. Green,
Virtual.
Dr. Henderson,
Not virtual, in person.
Mr. Howard,
Virtual.
Mr. Levinstein,
In person.
Ms. Maida,
Virtual.
Ms. Mineo,
Virtual.
Mr. Stridiron,
In person.
Mr. Walker,
Virtual.
we're going back in person.
Fine, thank you. We're going to move on to my next item, which is 5.3, a resolution to approve the public statement. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move. Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron.
Thank you, Madam President. The only question I had was the part that, if you could scroll down just a little bit, Mr. McCoy, talked about the 2 employees. Let's see here. It talks about them being former employees. That's the first time, I believe, any statement from the district gives a status of the 2 victims. So now the statement from the agreement said that they were on the trip. Now it says they're former employees. So basically, you, by having these 2 statements, have outed the victims. So that is a further Title VII violation and Title IX violation, because now it's furthering the harassment. So I would Who wrote this? Because I don't think any of the board members had any input into this document that is supposed to be a board statement.
Mr. Shaw, can you help us?
Yes, I was asked to write this by board leadership.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
No.
Dr. Henderson,
No.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
No.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. McCoy, let's go to item 5.4 first. The resolution to deny an employee appeal. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron?
Has the employee that filed this appeal, has that employee been given the report that was provided to the board regarding this situation? And because that report would help this person have a appeal, like prepare for an appeal by providing evidence.
Mr. McLemore.
I wasn't a part of this. There's only so much I can say.
Yeah, was this individual provided with the findings and the determination and decision?
I cannot say because I was a part of it.
I believe so. Yes, Mr. Stridiron.
So they actually have the report. So where's the defense of the appeal? Like where's the information so we can make a determination on how we vote?
Madam President, this is an executive session conversation.
Okay, so let's hold this item. We'll go back into executive session. Mr. Shaw, can we go back into executive session now and then come back?
Yes, you can have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular individual and indicate if it succeeds that you will be taking action after you return from exec.
Okay, but we can interrupt this meeting now to go into exec and then come back and do the remainder of the meeting.
You could.
Okay, so be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose. To discuss the employment history of particular individuals and matters leading to the, no, that's it, right?
A particular individual.
A particular individual. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second that.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
For the people that are watching, we're going to go to executive session to discuss this item. Then we're going to come back and more business will be held. Thank you.
Recording in.
Good evening, Madam President. I started the recording back up.
Thank you. I do have a question. The motion is still on the floor. Yes, Mr. Shaw? You're muted, Mr. Shaw. Let's get you unmuted first.
If it's been moved and seconded, it is on the floor, ready for discussion and vote.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Maida, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. So by voting yes, we are saying that he is not able to appeal. Am I correct?
It is denying his appeal. If you vote yes, it's denying his appeal that there has been discrimination against him under that policy.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's everybody clear. So any other questions? Let me see, Mr. Walker, you're okay. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
No.
Dr. Henderson,
No.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
No.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Before we move on, I'd like to call back on Mr. McCoy, please. And then Mr. Howard, I see your hand. Hang on a second.
I just want to go back to the virtual meetings, ma'am. I apologize. Sorry for the confusion. I counted it wrong. You had 5 to stay virtual meetings. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that. So the meetings, I have 5 people that said they want to stay virtual.
Thank you. Everybody got that? Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
No, that was my point of order. I was going to rise to a point of order for clarification on that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. So we're done with my section. Thank goodness. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Exceptional Learners, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. The Exceptional Learner Division has one item for the board's consideration, item 6.1.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. Bayer. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Dr. Spindler. And before you speak, is our interim director here? He
Yes,
was
ma'am.
before. Hello,
here.
Mr. Goldbeck, welcome. And next time you're going to be doing the job here. So thank you, sir.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Spindler.
The Division of Finance presents items 7.1 through 7.10 as a consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green.
Yes.
That concludes my items for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler, and good luck in your new district.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 8.1 through 8.13 for your consideration on tonight.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move.
Second that.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Mr. Levinstein, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. So, and related to item 8.9 for the approved, to approve an SMOA for live streaming instruction, which is apropos and necessary. So my question is, though, we have at times other people that are doing this work, like teacher aid, special ed teacher aid one-on-ones who also are in the same position and have a little, I'm going to say a little more difficult time, like the teacher might have teaching to an additional student on a virtual platform. So I was just wondering if there was any thought that those aides or assistants might also be deserving of a stipend. Thank you.
Anybody? Mr. Forget, can we have?
Well, we will take that into consideration when we negotiate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on these items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Striddard,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
yes,
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Madam President, I'd like to request permission to add an item to the agenda.
Would you like to tell us about the item, please, Mr. McLemore?
Yes, Madam President. Be it further resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the New Bergen Large City School District hereby appoints Yilma Blanchard, who possesses a provisional certification as a school psychologist, to the position of school psychologist to serve a 4-year probationary appointment in the school psychologist tenure area, effective March 7th, 2022 through March 6th, 2026, at an annual salary of $93,998, prorated for the 21-22 school year.
I'd like to entertain a motion to add this to the agenda, please.
So move.
Second.
Roll call to add.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Striddard,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
yes,
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Questions or discussion on this item? Roll
Point of
call.
order.
Excuse me, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
point of order. I just wanted to hear again if the resolution includes a recommendation by the superintendent.
Be it further resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Green?
I was gonna ask for clarification of that as well, if that was for the by the recommendation of Mr. Forget. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Striddard,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
yes,
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on now to the clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. Of the approval of the minutes from the January 11th regular board meeting.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
yes,
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida.
yes,
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. We're going to go back to public comments on non-agenda items. Mr. McCoy, I see nobody in the waiting room, so I assume we have no one.
That is correct, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
yes.
Ms. Mineo.